It was just past 2:30 a.m. on February 14th, 2000. Rain beat against the windows of a small home in Shelby, North Carolina. Inside, the Degree family was fast asleep, unaware that their lives were about to change forever. Asha Degree, just 9 years old, shared a room with her older brother, O'Brien. To anyone who knew her, she was a bright, shy, and thoughtful child. She loved basketball, reading, and staying close to her family. There were no signs of trouble, no rebellion, no reason to run away. And yet, in the middle of a stormy Valentine's night, Asha quietly gathered her backpack, slipped out of bed, and walked out into the darkness. No one saw her leave. Her parents, sleeping in the next room, never stirred. The only evidence of her decision would come hours later when strangers spotted her alone on the highway, a tiny figure walking against the storm. Why would a 9-year-old child walk into the night during one of the worst storms of the year? And where was she going? The mystery of Asha Degree begins here.
By the time the sun began to rise over Shelby that Valentine's Day morning, the Degrees were still unaware that Asha was gone. They believed she was safe, asleep in her room. But just before dawn, witnesses began to report something unusual. Along Highway 18, a rural stretch of road about a mile from the Degree home, drivers noticed a young girl walking alone. One motorist, a truck driver named David Gordon, later described the sight as unforgettable. He recalled seeing a child, small in stature, wearing a white long-sleeved shirt and white pants, trudging along the roadside as heavy rains soaked the pavement. At first, he thought it might be a trick of the storm, maybe someone older, or even a runaway teenager. But the closer he got, the more he realized it was a child, alone. Other drivers later confirmed similar accounts. One motorist even turned around, troubled by what he saw. He circled back, hoping to check on her. But by the time he returned, the little girl had disappeared into the woods that bordered the highway. Imagine this moment. A storm raging, a highway nearly empty in the early morning darkness, and a 9-year-old child vanishes into a tree line, leaving no further trace. What was pulling her forward, and what was she running from? At 6:30 a.m., Asha's mother, Aquila, went to wake her children for school. To her horror, Asha's bed was empty. The covers were neatly folded back. The little girl, her daughter, was gone. The police were called almost immediately. Within hours, the community mobilized in a frantic search. Neighbors, deputies, and volunteers walked the ditches and fields. Dogs were brought in. Helicopters circled overhead. Yet despite all of it, there was no sign of Asha. It was as though the storm had swallowed her whole. But Asha's disappearance would take a darker turn when searchers discovered something on the roadside, proof that she had indeed been walking that highway. A few of her belongings, a hair bow, a pencil, small items scattered along the wet ground, each one a breadcrumb, each one a chilling reminder that she had been there, and then nothing.
The search for Asha Degree began as most missing child cases do, frantic, emotional, fueled by community determination. But as the first 24 hours bled into 48, dread began to seep into every corner of Shelby. The police interviewed the family again and again.
They searched the Degree home for signs of forced entry, for any clue that Asha had been taken. Nothing. The house was untouched. The doors were locked. Asha had left of her own will, or at least it appeared that way. Volunteers walked the roadside in long, slow lines. They poked through ditches, combed through the brush, and waded knee-deep in mud. Cadaver dogs sniffed for a scent, but the heavy rain had washed most of the trail away. Still, fragments emerged. Witnesses confirmed the sightings along Highway 18. One even remembered how Asha bolted into the woods at the sight of headlights, almost as if she were hiding. But why would a child run from help? Police considered the possibilities. Could Asha have been lured away by someone she knew? Could a stranger have been waiting for her in the storm? No answers came, only more questions. By the third day, the Degrees faced an unbearable reality. Their daughter had vanished into thin air. The local press began covering the story heavily. Reporters stood outside the family home, microphones in hand, asking impossible questions. The Degree family, holding on to hope, made tearful pleas on camera. Harold, Asha's father, spoke quietly, almost as if whispering a prayer. "She's our heart. She's our baby. If anybody sees her, please bring her back." But beneath the media noise, the silence of unanswered questions grew heavier. What drives a 9-year-old child to leave her home in the middle of the night? Why did she walk into the storm? And why has no one seen her since?
As days turned to weeks, the search for Asha Degree spread outward. Police retraced every possible path she could have taken that night, mapping fields, creeks, and back roads. Neighbors were interviewed. Every friend, every teacher, every classmate was questioned. Yet not one person could explain why Asha had left or where she might have gone. Then a strange development. Several weeks later, workers discovered items near Highway 18. Among them, a pencil, a hair bow, and a marker. All were identified as Asha's. The items were found near a shed off the road, the same area where witnesses had last seen her dart into the woods. It was a chilling confirmation. Asha had been there, but after that, the trail went cold again. Theories began to multiply. Some believed she had been groomed, lured away by someone promising her adventure or gifts, a predator who knew her routine, who chose the storm as cover. Others suggested something even stranger, that Asha had run away intentionally, driven by reasons no adult had yet understood. But why would a child, sheltered and loved, vanish into the dark? For her family, these theories were unbearable. Asha Degree, her mother, clung to the belief that Asha would never run away willingly. She was scared of the dark. She didn't like thunderstorms. She never even spent a night away from us. None of this makes sense. The Degrees weren't alone in their disbelief. Investigators, too, struggled to piece together a motive. If this was a runaway case, why had no trace of her ever surfaced? No reports of a young girl alone in neighboring towns, no vehicle tracks, no forced entry, no struggle. The answers remained buried, like the scattered belongings found in the dirt. But then, nearly a year later, an even darker discovery shifted the course of the investigation. A school backpack, confirmed to be Asha's, was found wrapped in plastic, buried in the soil, nearly 30 miles away. It was the only major piece of evidence ever recovered, a haunting sign that Asha's journey had ended far from where it began. But who buried it, and why? The storm that swallowed Asha Degree had left behind no trail, no confession, no closure. Only a buried backpack, a silent, suffocating clue.
In the years since Asha vanished, the mystery has only deepened. Her case remains one of the most haunting in North Carolina, not because of what is known, but because of how little has ever surfaced. The backpack, buried so deliberately, hinted at intention. Someone had taken the time to wrap it, to hide it. Investigators wondered, was this an act of guilt, of concealment, or simply a chilling attempt to erase her existence? Despite countless leads, no suspect has ever been charged. Over the years, tip lines have buzzed with theories, fleeting sightings in nearby towns, whispers of a girl matching her description. None have ever been confirmed. In 2015, the FBI joined the search, releasing age progression photos of what Asha might look like now. They offered a reward for information, hoping that time might loosen the grip of silence. But even with federal attention, the storm around Asha's disappearance has never cleared. Her parents, Harold and Aquila Degree, still cling to hope. Every year they hold a walk, retracing the steps they believe their daughter once took. It is both a vigil and a vow, a promise to keep her story alive, no matter how much time passes. What makes Asha's case so haunting is its contradiction. She was not a runaway. She was not a troubled child. She was sheltered, loved, and careful. And yet, on a stormy night, she left home and stepped into the dark and never returned. What called her out of bed that night? What pulled her into the storm? The truth remains out there, scattered between theory and silence. More than 2 decades later, the Degree family continues to fight against forgetting. Because for them, Asha isn't just a mystery. She isn't a ghost story whispered along the highway. She is a daughter, frozen in time, waiting for answers. And perhaps that is what makes this case so unsettling. The idea that someone, somewhere, knows what happened on that road, knows why a 9-year-old girl walked into the storm and never came back. Thank you for joining us in this episode. If this story stayed with you, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Each voice raised keeps these mysteries alive, and perhaps one day it will help bring answers home. Until then, stay curious, and remember, sometimes the quietest roads hide the loudest secrets.